Hello, my name is Krista Avery. I'm a junior nursing major at Bloomsburg University. Today I want to talk about gross domestic product, or GDP, and how it differs between countries, and more importantly, how the size and growth of GDP impacts different countries' people. I chose this topic because I did a project and presentation on GDP in a public speaking class. First of all, gross domestic product is defined as a representation of the monetary value of all goods and services produced within a nation over a specific time period. In short, it is the measure of a nation's economic activity. Knowing how GDP is calculated is an important aspect to understanding GDP. GDP is equal to the private consumption plus gross and government investment plus government spending plus exports minus imports of the nation. GDP tells us the health of the economy, the size of the economy, and is considered the broadest indicator of economic output and growth. The biggest issue with GDP is debt is not taken into account. An example of this is the United States. I will be discussing later on how this is a major issue for the United States and ways to improve the U.S. GDP and job growth. The United States is ranked number 1 in national GDP but has a great deal of debt. It is easy to raise the economy and GDP of a nation by just borrowing money, but this does not take debt to future generations into consideration. And then here is a comic about how the spending of the U.S. is almost drowning us, but instead of stopping or reducing the spending, we are simply increasing the amount of debt we are in. The comparison of countries' nominal gross domestic product is based on International Monetary Fund and the Bureau of Economic Analysis. The United States is ranked number 1 in national GDPs as of 2016. Their GDP was $18,561,930. Following right behind the U.S. is the European Union, which is comprised of several nations such as Germany, France, Italy, and Spain. Some countries we discussed in class were Egypt, which is ranked 33rd with $330,159 in GDP, and Iraq, ranked 56th with $150,323 in GDP. This graphic shows the nominal GDP in billions of US dollars. The purple star is on the United States, which has about $10,000 billion. The green star represents the European Union, and within the European Union, each nation has its own GDP. Egypt is represented by the yellow star, and that has about $200 to $500 billion. And then Iraq is the red star, and that has about $20 to $50 billion. So for Egypt's economy, the rule of law is uneven across the country, due in part to the fact that judicial independence is vulnerable to political policy. However, Egypt's economy is progressing due to recent policy changes, including dynamic investment, job creation, and the reform of full subsidies. This is reinforcing the progress of the economy and ensuring a long-term transformation of the economy, and Egypt's GDP is progressing and improving. Iraq economy. It has an unrated economic freedom due to a lack of reliable data, and also the economic statistics are unrated due to official economic statistics being inadequate. Also, Iraq's central government is weak, and there is the presence of political instability. This has an impact on the people of Iraq. Iraq's GDP is also declining, but it's also already low, so the people of Iraq have a difficulty in finding the resources necessary and also have a difficulty in having freedom. A higher GDP equals a higher standard of living. When there is a growth in GDP, the standard of living also goes up. So why does this really matter? Because material things are a key element of economic well-being. The standard of living is based on 3 things: the savings rate, the productivity, and the population of the nation. Countries with a higher GDP are able to produce more with fewer resources and are in turn more likely to be able to obtain important things such as food, shelter, clean water, and freedom. In addition, people who live in countries with a higher GDP tend to be more educated and live longer due to having more access to resources and health care. In contrast, the effects of a declining GDP include a decrease in stock markets, a decrease in the country's exchange rate, and a decrease in the standard of living. People who live in a nation with a declining GDP or an already low GDP have a hard time finding such things as food, shelter, clean water, and freedom, and are more likely to be uneducated and live shorter lives due to a lack of resources and health care. Like I mentioned before, the United States is ranked number 1 in national GDP but has a great deal of debt. The U.S. economy is experiencing a financial crisis and the economy is slowly recovering. This graphic here shows how the U.S. employment rate has been declining steadily since 1975 and also how the U.S. GDP rate has also been declining from 1975 with a slight increase in 1993 to 2007. But overall, the U.S. employment growth and GDP growth has been declining. Several ways to increase U.S. GDP include free public college education, which will increase future workforce, adding new skills, and having more people obtain necessary training in order to get jobs that will increase the U.S. economy, raising the minimum wage to $10, which will increase job growth and medium incomes, and you need this for a more equitable distribution of excess profits of labor, and then parental compensation, which is an important part of a healthy and just society, and also having people get paid to take maternity leave or paternity leave will free up jobs. And then suspension, which is Social Security, will boost the later life incomes of Americans who need it the most. Increasing just one of these 4 things will increase job growth and GDP of the United States. Thank you for listening to this presentation. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope now you have a better understanding of what gross domestic product, or GDP, is, how it differs between countries, and more importantly, how the size and growth of GDP impacts the country's people.